If at some point you tried to get more fit than you currently are or have been, the question usually comes up, what's the body fat percentage you're walking around with? It's a question that I always wonder, and there are a lot of different methods for trying to figure it out, and some are a little bit derivative and some are the gold standard. I did 3 different ones all on the exact same day to get a side-by-side comparison of what they would look like. I'll discuss the results and the differences. Stick around. So before I get into the meat and potatoes of the video, just in general, there are a bunch of different health markers you can look at aside from the number on the scale. BMI is the easy one, right? You put in your height, your weight, your age, you can go online, hit a BMI calculator, and it's going to tell you if you fit into the obese, overweight, normal, underweight category. But those are pretty broad, and they don't really take into consideration things like how much lean body mass you have or anything else. They're good for broad swaths of the population to quickly dump them into categories. Like for instance, when I mentioned in my previous video that I had gone from the obese category into the overweight category when it came to BMI. And I was basing that purely on my height, weight, type it in, and it said, hey, you're like 29.8, so now you're just overweight. Is that helpful? Maybe it is, especially, for insurance purposes. Those guys probably look at things like BMI. But if you want a more detailed look at your level of fitness, you probably want to go deeper than that. And that's what usually drives people into what's my body fat. It's certainly what drove me down that road because I was curious. There are a bunch of different ways to test it. Like you can use one of the scales or handheld devices that checks the electrical resistance of your body. That's called like a BIA or an electrical impulse. I forget the actual term. I'll put it somewhere. But it just measures the amount of electricity or the resistance of that electricity through your body because muscle and fat have different levels of electrical resistance. There are a lot of opinions and they vary on how reliable that is or accurate. I know that your level of hydration and other things can very heavily play into whether that works or not. Now I have a scale that measures that, and so anytime I step on it I can hit that setting, and that setting will give me not just my weight, but it goes into the electrical resistance and kicks me out a number. Now I have to tell it my height and I have to tell it my age. I don't know how critical that is for the calculations it does, but in general right now my scale's telling me I'm around 25%. Earlier today when I did it, it was 24 and some change. I'll put in that footage. The upside of this is it's easy, right? You can go on Amazon and buy a scale like this right now, and you don't have to buy a really Gucci one like I've got that gives you a whole bunch of extra numbers. You can just get one that gives you your weight and its calculated or derived body fat percentage. I have heard from any number of people that this is or is not reliable is the problem. Like I don't know. Maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but it is good for tracking trends, right? Like you can see if your percentage is going up or you can see if it's going down. For the record, when I started this journey back in January and I was weighing 228 pounds, my body fat percentage according to that scale was mid to high 30s. Like it was bad, like 35 to 38% body fat, which meant that basically I was 60% lean and 40% fat, like me and bacon, and pretty salty too. It obviously came down as I lost weight, but then I thought, man, is this really legit? So I wanted to try something else. So I got a coach at work, and so I don't have to pay any extra to have him whenever he's got some time, which is admittedly pretty rarely, but I coerced him into doing a skinfold test. That's where they get calipers and they do pinches across your body in various points and give you a number based on that. You type it all into a calculator, same thing. Type it all in after you've done those pinches, and you're supposed to do like 3 pinches and you take the average of them. So I do a pinch on one spot, take a break, do another pinch on the same spot, do another pinch on the same spot, and if they all agree, then that's the number I type in, put in like 5 or 6 of those locations. Once again, the calculator spits out a number. So when he did mine, and like I said, that was earlier today, but it was in the morning, had not worked out, had breakfast, it was right around 17 and some change, which sounds a lot better than 25. And I was like, wow, man, look at how wildly inaccurate that resistance was. Skinfold's gotta be the jam. And so I was happier with that number. The number made me happy. I was like, oh, good to go. Much lower number. I'm like much more athletic because 25 still sounds pretty fat to me. And obviously, since I've already lost a bunch of weight and I'm closer to when I was skinnier, 15 years ago, I was thinking, hey, Good to go, 17%. Well, that's all good and well, but you know, I needed a tiebreaker. What's the better standard? Now there are dunk tanks where they can have you like submerge and do a weight based on that, and they give you stuff. If there's one around here close to me, I'm not aware of who does that. And it's a more involved test, right? You got to get into swim trunks, you got to go get dunked in water, and I think you got to empty all the air out of your lungs. It's pretty uncomfortable from what I understand, but it's supposed to be a pretty good test. So I'm not discounting it, but I did not do that. What I did instead is what's called a DEXA scan. And a DEXA scan, you lay on a table and X-ray just scans your whole body from the top of your head to your toes, legit top to bottom. And the DEXA scan cost me $100. I was in and out in 30 minutes. The actual time on the table was about 7.5 minutes. And where I did it, and I'll put some links in the description, I did it up in Lansdowne at the sports medicine place there. The coach or the guy who's doing the diagnostic actually sat with me and went over all the results after. And the DEXA scan said 25.5%. So I'm inclined to believe that 25-ish% is really where I'm currently at. I would say the DEXA scan, I can't say it's the gold standard, but it is pretty in-depth. Like, it scans every inch of you, catalogs out things like bone density. It tells you if you have more muscle mass in your left arm versus your right arm, left leg versus left leg. Torso, same thing. And it tells you if your fat distribution is higher up or lower down, which you probably can figure out on your own just from looking at yourself in the mirror. But nonetheless, it was pretty interesting to me. And it's also interesting because you can spot imbalances. Like if you have a much stronger left arm than right arm because you're doing something weird with your body and maybe need to kind of balance things out, or talk to an exercise physiologist about doing that, or a physical therapist. Like, there's a lot of information that you get from a DEXA scan that you just can't get from other means. It was interesting to me that DEXA scan kind of really agreed with the electrical resistance scale, because like I said, depending on who you talk to, they're like, oh, wildly inaccurate, crazy, don't believe the scale, you've got to use other methodologies. But at least in my case, and I can't speak for the general population, like, holy crap, I can't say you should only trust this. I will say this though, in regards all of those methods across the board, any one of them I think is a good idea if you're interested in trying to reduce fat while you are losing weight, because you don't want to lose muscle. If you look at my other video, I started losing muscle pretty rapidly when I first started dieting, and it was bad. Like, I could visibly look at my arms, my shoulders, my legs and go, man, I am losing muscle. I could tell. So I had to take steps to stop that. You can kind of track these things with any body fat percentage measurement because you want to look at the trend. What I really wish I had done is a DEXA scan back in January. And yeah, it probably would have been depressing because I was pretty fat, but at least then I could have seen the trend from then to now because they keep a running record. What I'm probably going to do is in another 90 days get another DEXA scan because I'd like to get my body fat percentage under 20. I think that's doable. I think it's healthy. It probably puts me somewhere in the 180s in terms of overall weight. Now, yeah, I could probably try and gain up muscle to that point, but it's very difficult, especially if you're an adult and kind of post-pubescent, like out of your early 20s, to build muscle while losing fat. Now, obviously, you could turn to chemical enhancements, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm not saying that at some point I won't maybe take a little stroll down that road, legally under a doctor's supervision, of course. But right now, I'm going to try and do it where I'm currently at. And I can't even say I'm doing it naturally. Obviously, I'm already chemically enhanced. But I'd like to not go further down that road, at least at this point. So I'm going to try and get there. And that's going to probably require, obviously, continued dieting and more heavy lifting. I've got to keep hoisting weights, otherwise the muscle will go away as well. It is probably almost impossible to lose weight and lose entirely fat. Anytime you lose weight, you're probably going to lose some of column A and some of column B. And I base this on a lot of reading that I've done, watching videos from other people, and talking to doctors and exercise physiologists. But what you want to do is limit the amount of muscle that you lose to the best of your ability, because that's important. So that's where I'm at right now. Some other interesting things you can get from DEXA, bone density, which mine was excellent, like 94th percentile of males in my age range, which means that I don't really have to worry about osteoporosis, at least right now, or any bone weakening due to mineral loss. There's really more information than I can even go into, posting screenshots of some of the stuff that came from my DEXA scan, and just being able to sit down with somebody and kind of talk to them, because he actually started asking me like, well, how are you losing weight? How are you doing it? And I said, hey, I'm on a drug regimen, but I'm also on a pretty strict diet, strict-ish diet, in terms of portion control, high protein, trying to limit processed stuff. And obviously all the lifting that I'm doing is more weight, like heavier weight involved, like trying to really focus on things like squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead press, pull-ups, rows, things that really kind of force you to lift more weight. Because I feel like that's really using bigger muscle groups, the only way to really kind of convince your body, hey, I need this muscle, let's retain it. There are, like I said, other ways to figure out your body fat percentage, but those three that I did, like I said, I think that one's really easy and one is really probably about as accurate as it gets. The middle one, I think, is really kind of dependent on a lot of factors. And the coach even said, hey, this skinfold test, it depends on if you've worked out, your hydration status, like where you are during the course of the day, because your body changes throughout the day. From the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, the amount of what's going on in your skin and your subcutaneous fat, it changes. The DEXA scan is the DEXA scan. Your fat is your fat. It literally sees your fat and your muscle and tells you what you've got going on. So please don't think that I am discounting the coach's information or what he did. And I think if I were going to use skinfold continually, I just every 60 or 90 days get it done again, but at the exact same time, after the same meal, pre or post workout, like exact same every time. In general, when it comes to the electrical resistance scales and the skinfold, those are going to give you your best information if you do it consistently at the same time. Because if you do them at radically different times during the day, I think it's going to skew. I've seen that resistance scale skew as much as 3 percentage points, and it's higher earlier. Like if I first do it in the morning, it's telling me like 28. When I come home from work, it's 24, 25, and that tells me probably the more accurate time, at least for me, with my habits, the way I run my day, is around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when it's going to give me the best time based on all those other factors. Anyway, guys, I hope that's been interesting. Just another little snapshot into me trying to get a little more fit. Obviously, I still got some lbs I got to drop and a little more muscle to gain, hopefully. But that, at this point, is probably going to be another 3 to 6 months. Trying to drop 10 pounds in a week or two is probably a really good idea if you want to ditch muscle and feel like crap. And I'm not trying to do that. If I can dump 1 to 2 pounds a week while training reasonably hard and eating a clean diet or clean-ish diet, I think that's going to be my path. Oh, what does that put me into? August? All right. So anyway, I'm not going to turn this into a fitness channel. I'm not going to get crazy with it. But I will say, once again, if you're curious as to how this continues, where I end up, or any further insights that I get into this fitness journey, please subscribe. And as always, if you like guns, knives, and the occasional booze content, subscribe for that as well. Ladies, gentlemen, take care. Stay safe. I'll talk to you soon.
Get 'em, Jay.